Hi there, and welcome to another Creeper World 4 development video. I have a map I'd like to show you today and how I created this map. As you can see, we've got some interesting looking terrain here. I'm in sort of a first person mode right now, so let me pull out and you can see this map's actually based on an image of one of our favorite characters, President Abraxas. And it's even got some of the same shadings and tones. We can zoom back down. You can see it's just made up of regular old terrain here, but it's been crafted from an image. So I'm going to show you how to do that today, as well as a few other interesting and neat things. So you can see that this is actually a map. Let's deposit some creeper around. Let it flow, and for scale we can drop down our base and build a few things. So you can see it's a honest to goodness actual map. Toggle transparency on the creeper here. You can see the map underneath it, and creeper flowing around. This is a relatively small map. Looks like about 200 wide by 150 tall. So here's the end results. Let's go take a look at how you might do this and some other stuff. So let's pause and go to our menu, go back to the main menu, and just start with a blank map. So here's our blank map. I'll just show you a few of the interesting things I've been working on for that can be used by map makers when the game's ultimately released. So for starters, there are some themes that are going to be built in, most likely, and they define colors, textures, brightness for each level. So if we just start, I'm just going to make a random terrain here. That looks good. Random fractal terrain. There'll of course be more controls on this. Right now it's just click a button and it makes an interesting map. So I've got a standard theme here. I've got a desert theme, different textures for different levels and brightnesses. I've got a mono theme as well. It's the same texture but a different brightness for each terrain level. There's also a lock button right here. So when you come in and you start painting, it will keep the same texture. Let's go back to a desert theme, instead of keeping the texture above it. So if I turn lock off, you can see the texture is maintained even though the terrain itself is changing. Go back to lock. Texture is maintained. This also applies for terraforming by the player in the game. So if you want to make a map and you would like the textures to always match a given terrain height, you can do that by locking the theme in place. If you don't, if for instance you want areas of the map that are always one particular shade regardless of how high or low the terrain is, then you don't lock. Another neat thing is here's the map kind of floating in space. We can put a background around it now, a planetary background. There'll of course be different texture options for this, but let's zoom down. You can see it looks like it's sitting on the surface of a planetesimal or something. Helps provide a frame of reference. We can of course remove it, so you're floating in space. So if you want an asteroid map, you might want pieces of terrain floating around in space, but if you want something that looks like it's anchored, then there'll be options, visual options for that as well. Now while we're here, let's just bounce through a few other things, keep this video short and tight. I have also added decal support. I guess it makes sense to show you that first, and then I'll get back to that Abraxas map towards the end of this video, how we made that. So decals, let's put one down there, and let's make it nice and large so we can see it. So here's the decal. Notice that it projects on top of the terrain regardless of the terrain height. We can load an image. Let's go here and load, I don't know, our Abraxas image, something familiar. We can see our good president here. You can also move them off the map. So if you want to position them on this planetoid thing, you can do that. You might put text or decorations or whatever over here. They'll of course be script controllable, so that you'll be able to create them or change their colors or remove them once I've added scripting into the game. There's a number of options here, quite a few options. You can flip them around, you can rotate them, a couple stretching modes, linear versus anamorphic. Linear is, you see how you can get a really, oh wow, he looks, yeah, that's a mean looking Abraxas. It's that way, of course, because the image has to lay across this terrain. If we look at it from a top view perspective, we can see it starts to look more normal because it's exactly projected down on the terrain. But when we're like this, it gets stretched. Now, an anamorphic stretch is not always the best option. It works for some effects and not so much for others. Faces, it doesn't do much justice to. But if you had more like dirt or a plasma cloud or something like that, then a non-linear, an anamorphic stretch might tend to make more sense. Or if you just like really messed up looking faces, then that's fine too. Okay, so decals we have, and you can apply multiple decals. There's numerous, I think I've got 16 image slots right now, and you can do some, if you want various smoothing or pixel-like effects, point filtering. It's hard to see on him because he's a fairly high-res image to start with. We could, let's try this right fast. If I've got time, let's do load a patch of terrain, same sort of stuff that the background's made out of, that this planet is made out of, that we're sitting on. So let's move him around, and then let's make it large, like really large, and zoom out. And we're still on anamorphic. That's fine. Let's switch it back to a linear so we can see. Now you look at that, you're like, well, that's neat. Well, that's large. Didn't know you could make them that big. That's neat. So you could overlay parts of the terrain. You might even decide to come in and change the color, like the opacity. You might not want it to be so completely opaque. You just want a little bit of an effect. Or you really want to intensify the color, that sort of thing. But this is a texture, I think it's 512 by 512, and it's been stretched, so it's kind of blurry. You can, let's turn on wrapping for that texture, and then tile it twice in each dimension. Since this is a tileable terrain, meaning the right and left edges match and the top and bottoms match without creating a hard seam, you can tile it. Let's go 4 by 4. You get the general idea. So it increases the effective resolution by repeating the texture multiple times. Okay, so let's go back and start again. I've also got a way, and this is how I made the Abraxas map. Let's explode this up and explore this stuff. Let's go here and pick our Abraxas image. You can see it's loaded a little preview image of it here. This little button here just expands it out so that I can get a bigger look at it. You can see that as I point to it, there's this color bar here at the bottom right hand corner of the screen. As I'm pointing to it, it shows me the color. You're like, well, that's not the original Abraxas image. That's right. This has been reduced to 16 colors off of a given palette. So I've coded in all these really neat algorithms that can analyze an image, reduce it to a number of colors, 16, 8, 4, or 2, and then sort them, and then those are going to become terrain heights. So there's going to be 16 potential levels of terrain here, and this is the order they're going to be in. So if I hit generate map, then it's going to make a map. A little noisy, so don't worry, we'll fix this up. Let's switch to maybe the mono theme. Let's lock it, and yeah, sure, let's put the planet back, and let's go back into our image editing, put him over here, and you can see already it's an interesting map. You can see that things like the bright forehead area here became a plateau, and the darker areas of his suit became flat plains down here, and the highlights, these gold things on this giant collar, are kind of walls. So this is image analysis, so it derived 16 colors from the image. If I only wanted 8 colors, you can watch the preview here change 4 all the way down to 2. So this is the easiest way to understand what's going on. 2 colors to represent the image. That's it. So it's one or the other, or transparent, which is what this checker background is. So if I generate the map from that, you can see it makes 2 levels of terrain. If I wanted to increase the distance between those, I could change the scale here. You can see it pulls some up and drops others down. I can also see the color palette chosen here, and I can drag these colors. Let's say I wanted the high color to be all the way at level 20 and the low color to be all the way at level 1. Then you get this really huge difference here. Or I could put them closer in the middle, like so, up off the terrain but closer to each other. Okay, and here's 4 colors. Here's 8. And back to 16. Now, so these others, black and white, unique, and EGA, instead of deriving the color palette from the image itself, they are a fixed set of colors. For black and white, it's a grayscale from black up to white based on however many you've chosen here, 2, 4, 8, or 16. So here, similar results. It looks at the image, says, is it closest to black or closest to white? It picks one, and it becomes those colors. Similar for 4, it's got 4 choices to choose from. And back up to 16. Unique is just a different set of colors, primaries, secondaries, and some others, and you get different results based on the image that you import. And then EGA is, well, go look it up on Wikipedia if you don't know what EGA is. It's that color palette, and similarly you get a mapping to a fixed set of colors. So anyway, this big long discussion is to say that you can load different images, you can filter them, you can click these buttons and hit generate map until something interesting happens, and then you can go play that map. Now if it's too noisy like this is, you might want to reduce the color palette so that it reduces the selection based on how noisy the original image was. You might decide you want a completely abstract map and smooth the whole thing out like so. Perfectly playable terrain, very simple terrain, but it's been algorithmically smoothed. And all of these options, of course, work with various combinations of the other ones. There's just a complete outline. So let's go back here. Let's generate our map there. Like, oh, okay, maybe that's playable. Does black and white do any better? Let's just stick to image 8. 1 level of smoothing, maybe. Yeah, sure. Okay. And you're like, okay, well, that's neat. That doesn't look like the image you started with, though. That looks like the terrain, but not the image. So we can go to overlays. This isn't decals. This is just map-wide overlays. In case you don't want to manage individual little decals here and there, you could just project things directly down. So let's load an image here. Open him up. Apply it. That is, poof, it's so intense it's masking the terrain. So let's go in and we can all the way transparent, or we can bring it up just a shade. Yeah, maybe in that general area. Well, that's close to that original thing you did, but not quite the same. It looks a little too smooth here and there. Well, there's another overlay, so you've got two. This one I'm going to use for some built-in effects. I could load a custom image here if I wanted to as well, but I'm just going to turn it on, set it to craters, which it's already on, and then you can see if I turn that up, you get these craters. So I'm just going to blend in a little bit of that. If I'd rather than be dark, I can, or whatever tint I'd like them. I'm just going to pull them down here and position it like that, or maybe back up on in this general area. Yeah, so this is very close to that original map I showed you, and all I did was load in an image and then click a few buttons until something looked interesting, and then I've chosen to overlay some graphics on top of it. Don't have to. I could turn it on and off. I could just do craters if I wanted, etc. So I'm going to turn those off. I'll leave the craters on. Let's quickly go back here, pick another image. Oh gosh, I don't know. Let's say bush. A picture of a bush. Very, very noisy. Generate the map. You get a lot of noise. This kind of cement type area right here, flattened out. But this is going to be a case, I think, where you might want to turn this one into more of an abstract map. Now, if you look at this, you'd say, I have no idea that's a bush, and that's okay. You can start with a picture of anything. Take a picture of a tree in your backyard, smooth it out, and by the time the algorithms and color picking are done with it, you've made yourself an interesting map that's completely and perfectly playable. So let's bring him back in there. We might go here and add, stick some emitters across the top over here. Off they go. If you want to play it, you might start up here and carry on. Oh, there's a well, yeah, I'll just let it go. There's a couple things that I want to show you in the next video. So come back in 2-3 weeks, whenever it is I do the next video, and I will explain this earn zone and these earn portals. And they're not completely done yet, which is why I don't want to talk about them right now, but they hopefully will be in another couple weeks. I will also talk about some breeder creeper settings that I've added regarding a duty cycle. If you are on Discord, probably this feature will probably be talked about and maybe even shown in a couple videos on Discord. Just little informal things that will happen over the next few weeks. We'll talk about how that works, and it's an alternate way to produce creeper on a map, and as opposed to these emitters. So just another update. Just wanted to keep you in the loop as to what I've been working on and what's upcoming next. So thanks for watching.